before we start, I'm going to introduce the two speakers today. We have first Rick Martin, who is the founder and managing director of Permission, which is a digital agency based in Sydney. And we have GD, who is the CEO of Catalyst, of the company Catalyst, which is a company specialized in leadership skills. So maybe we try to understand what Rick has to expose and to start with the first speaker. Rick is a digital marketing expert, specialized on website, but also in all social activities that help businesses to find their place in the digital landscape. More importantly, he is specialized in leveraging a digital platform and customer data to make sure that we understand customer behavior and that we can also find insight to drive action and sales. Rick?
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Emil, for that introduction. So again, welcome and thank you for coming this morning. I thought I'd start with a short story about how I ended up here and why I feel an expert or capable of talking to you about social selling. Like many businesses, a number of years ago, Permission went through some changes, and I need to look at how, good morning, how we were going to drive growth and changes within Permission. And I looked at our marketing strategies that we were implementing and realised what we weren't doing was implementing any of the real digital strategies that were available in the marketplace. So my marketing team and I reviewed everything we were doing. We changed our marketing approach and moved from being very traditional marketing into a much more a content and social media approach to marketing and lead generation. And what happened is, and today we've driven significant growth into the business through social selling and content marketing, and every week we're getting leads driven into the business. I then started talking to most of our clients about what we were doing to see if it would be appropriate for them, and that has then driven into a very successful part of our business around driving LinkedIn training, management of campaigns for clients on LinkedIn, content creation, development, and building and writing profiles, etc. Good morning, for our clients. So just very quickly, so Permission is a digital engagement agency. As Emil mentioned, we develop and deliver a variety of services across the digital landscape, focusing on strategy, creative, campaign management, website development, relationship marketing, CRM relationship development. But at the core of what we do is an understanding of customers, how they behave, and then turning those behaviours into buying decisions. Today there are really three things that I want to talk through. The first is how the rules have changed and how as salespeople we can flip the dynamic back to our favour and using social media to drive that. The 4 stages to becoming a social seller and what that means and how we can drive that forward, and then leaving you with a methodology and approach to really drive through that. As Emil mentioned, I'm more than happy to take questions throughout the presentation, so if you've got questions at any point, feel free to ask. So, as I said, today our goal is to really change the sales game and flip it back into our favour. But before we get into the detail of the discussion, I'd like to get a bit of an understanding around how different people here are using LinkedIn. So just very quickly with a show of hands, can you put up your hand if today you're generating regular leads from LinkedIn and social media? Anybody? Oh, good, excellent, about a third of it. And then on a different perspective, but same thing, is anybody using LinkedIn, by show of hands, using LinkedIn as a way of prospecting and finding people you could talk to, whether you then don't necessarily reach out to using LinkedIn, but using it at least as a prospecting tool? Great, that's about half the audience. So it's good to see that people are using LinkedIn. So, good. Before I move forward into the next part, just take that one step further. What's the challenges that you're facing? What's stopping people using LinkedIn as either a prospecting tool or a lead generation or even as a sales tool to drive and meet prospects and clients? Any reasons why you're not doing it? I'm going to jot them up on the board, so feel free to be interactive. Time and resource. Cool. Any other things? Is it just time?
I think it's fear of rejection as well.
Fear?
Yeah, to tie in with those two, it's very personal, so you can't just give it to your assistant or something.
Personal?
You're personally rejected.
personal medium?
For me, just unfamiliarity with the platform.
Unsure. The platform and approach, is that a summary of that?
So,
Cool. Excellent. Anything else?
Content. Requires content.
Requires content? Cool. I apologise now for my handwriting and spelling, so if I've made a mistake, please forgive me. Anything else?
I think there's an emerging perception of spam. People are using it too often, and it feels like it's the old email spam.
Excellent. Anything else? Cool. So definitely going to talk to some of these points, not every one of them. Unfortunately, I haven't got a solution to put an extra hour in the day, but I do have some comments on how to manage time and resources, and obviously one solution is outsourcing it, but I'll talk to that point slightly differently. Fear of rejection, and I'll talk through to that as well. Definitely a personal medium, and again, can give some experiences on how we do it, because if you're following me, and hopefully you will by the end of this, or Emil, who also works at Permission, it is all very personal, but we've got a whole team of people that are working on it behind the scenes. So there are ways around managing that as well. Definitely go through in detail the platform and talk through how that works. Requires content. I'll give you some thoughts and tips on the content. And the perception of spam is definitely an interesting one, and that goes to, I will talk a bit about how you can overcome that as well. So towards, yes?
Rick, we also cover LinkedIn seems to be expanding, so now there's Pulse,
Yep.
there's a whole lot of different other ways.
Yep.
How you use them
Sure.
and which ones.
So again, definitely we'll touch on that, and specifically on Pulse, not in detail because we're going through a variety of things, but I'll talk to that a little bit more, and obviously happy to talk in detail, talking with you after that. Good morning.
Good morning.
We thought we'd make it embarrassing for you to walk through the whole audience.
Excellent.
Cool. Excellent, thanks. So I'll definitely touch on most of these topics. Good morning. That's all right. We thought we'd make you walk through the whole audience. We can all look at you. And as I said, at the end of it, if you've got questions, feel free to come up and we can discuss them afterwards. So, as I said earlier, it's all about how we change the game and the dynamic into our favour. And really, as I think we all appreciate, the market has significantly changed. There are three core areas where we perceive or we see the market has changed. One is obviously the growth of social media and the term social buying. So what we're seeing today is people that we're trying to sell to or buyers have much greater access to information, and research is showing anywhere up to at least 70% of the buying decision is made before any prospect reaches out to a vendor. So they're using their own digital channels, and they're becoming, as it says in the middle slide there, social buyers, where they're using digital channels to research and understand the market well before they reach out and contact any vendor. What we're seeing, definitely in my industry and in a lot of the client work we're doing, is that by the time they're reaching out a vendor, at best case, they've already divided their shortlist, and at a worst case, even though they're going to multiple vendors, they've also already decided who they're most likely going to choose. So we've got to look for ways that we can interject our thoughts and processes into the their buying process so that we can impact that. And then finally, and always a contentious point, the old models aren't working anymore. So typically, you can read any research from saying it's completely ineffective to significantly reduced effectiveness of cold calling. But either way, in today's world, and this is research by LinkedIn, 59% of buyers would think less of you or your company if you used cold calling. Combining that with the dynamic that's changed around the buying decision. So typically 10, 15 years ago, there was 1 to 3 people in any buying process. There's now anywhere up to at least 10 people who are influencing the buying decision. So as salespeople, how do we influence and know who all those people are and then impact them? The other significant change is ability to approve or sign off on budget. So historically, line management could instigate and then approve their own projects and had a reasonable size sign-off. Now, everything at least goes to the finance department or CFO, and any significant purchase process is driven all the way through to the board. So if we're trying to influence decision and it's at a board level, how do we then impact and influence board members, and how do we know who they are, etc.? that's our perspective of the market. Do people agree? Are they sort of the challenges that we're all facing day to day? Are there things that I've missed or things you don't agree with?
I think the perception on cold calling or not is varied. Depends on who you ask. This is obviously done by LinkedIn. I think they would
It's a bias.
sway it
Yeah,
towards no cold calling.
Yeah.
But my biggest customer by far was a cold call. Mind you, it's the only one. But it was
Congratulations.
Coca-Cola Amatil called them up. They bought. We've done millions of dollars worth of business.
Absolutely, and I've got in my own business. I've got great examples.
You know?
Yeah.
As long
I
as
don't
it's
want to
relevant.
abandon it. There's another one of them out there.
As long as it's relevant,
Yeah.
really relevant.
Yeah.
I think to your point though, cold calling is a resource demanding approach, and it is a little bit hit and miss. So if nothing else, and I obviously do but I do cold calling in our business as well. But it's how we make those cold calls more effective by understanding what's going on. So at least from our perspective, there's a warmness to that lead, if not from their perspective.
I think LinkedIn offers an opportunity to qualify the cold call before you make it, at least research.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Et cetera.
And I'll talk to that point as well. Thanks, Mark.
The other thing is buyers don't necessarily want to hear what you've got to say about your product. They want to hear what your customers and other people have got to say about your product. That's what's making the buying decision now, not we do this and we do that, we can offer this and upgrade and got all this. It's what the customers say, kind of like the TripAdvisor model. It's not necessarily what the hotel's saying, it's what they
read in the market, which is that whole point about them being social buyers and them using social media to really understand the broader market. I'll leave JD to talk to that point a lot more than I will, because he's got some really good insights into how to flip that model around as well. But I will talk a little bit to that point. Any other comments? Do people generally agree that the market is definitely different if you're selling 15 years ago to what you are today?
Yeah.
Great. So, as I said, how can we change the dynamic? What do we need to do as salespeople to flip the game back into our process? So, obviously, and I think most people here would be at least interested in it, from our perspective, it's how do we engage prospects in a thought leadership perspective, so that the perception they have of us is driven by our personas and our digital life and the information and marketplace we're putting in there. And that's the key driver to it. So it's really how do we become a thought leader and position ourselves as industry experts, highlighting and leveraging our experience and industry understanding. And then how do we prepare for and understand our key prospects? And that was a comment that we've had a few times already. What are the opportunities we have as salespeople to really understand the market and where that fits? And that goes to things like the Pulse publishing platforms and that sort of thing, because we can then see which of our prospects are engaging in, what are they talking about, and what are they prepared for. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So really this is all about preparing us to become a social seller or a social seller, and we look at, in what we work with our clients, and we recommend and support a 4-stage process around social selling. I'll go through these in detail, but just to quickly highlight it, the first one is obviously your brand and your persona, your digital presence and your digital online brand. The second step is how do you find prospects, and once you find them, how do you understand them, and then finally, sorry, I'm not sure if you can see, and then the fourth one is how do you then build a connection with them. I'll take it in my session this morning very much up into the perspective of when to reach out or how to reach out to them, and then potentially create a meeting, and then JD will then pick it up from there, and how do you take that sales prospect all the way through to a converted purchase and a client. So really your personal brand, and what am I talking about here? Your personal brand from a LinkedIn perspective really focuses on your LinkedIn profile. And I wanted to make this quite practical so that people can take away some things that they can look at today when you get back to your office to look at how you build your personal brand. And I really am talking about how you build and what content you put into your profile. It starts with keywords, and keywords, like in Google, if anybody buys any media on Google, keywords are the language you use to describe your personality and your persona. And these need to be words that resonate with your audience and are valuable and insightful and talk to the industry experience you've got. It's not about the words that you would use to describe the jobs you've done and what you've done. It's all about the industry experience you've had. The second most important thing is the photo. It's really critical that you have, for all your teams, senior management, board, etc. down, clear and easy to see photos that actually you can see the face and you can understand that person. The things that we see most often that we really recommend, it's not about having a wedding photo or a photo of you at your sports club, or the worst one that we see often is a selfie that somebody's taken on a night out. That's what they had on their phone when they created their LinkedIn profile. It's worth spending a little bit of money and getting a professional photo that you can then use and deliver your persona. Value proposition. It's really critical that you're explaining in your profile what's important to your audience, not about you. One of the most common mistakes we see with LinkedIn profiles, and the first step we look at, is most people recreate their CV online in LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not about you.
Sorry for me.
That's all right. That's all right. Good morning.
My friends.
As I said, LinkedIn is not about an opportunity for everybody in the room to find your next job. LinkedIn is about you trying to find your next client. So you'll see your profile should actually talk about the successes you've had in industry and what you've done for your clients, not about how successful you were at achieving your sales targets and how quarter on quarter you've over exceeded your targets. It's really about what you've done for your clients, and that will show value to the prospects that are talking to you. Because I'll guarantee you all of your prospects, when you start reaching out to them, will then be looking at your LinkedIn profile as well.
So Rick, do you find companies are paying you to do that service for their employees, or people expecting that to happen?
Both. We are paying us to do the research, or paying us to write their profiles.
Paying you to write their stuff?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do, and I'll briefly talk about it now because you've asked the question, is that one of the services we have, and in fact it's an offer that we've got on today, is an audit process for LinkedIn profiles, so top things to look at, and then we take that to the point for either management where we actually rewrite their profiles for them, and then write guides and how-to booklets for staff to improve their profiles as well.
How deep a level in the company should that apply? Because I work for a software company, there's a lot of developers who wouldn't care less, but how far is it important that your profile is a bit of a kind of attractive to customers?
So,
Perspective.
yeah, I understand the question. So we would at least look at senior management, senior sales staff, and all salespeople as step one, and then anybody that is publicly representing the company. So yes, maybe the developer that sits in the back of the office is less important, but what we would typically do is, and that's where we would provide how-to guides for the rest of the teams to then be able to implement it. But anybody that is publicly facing industry, and your prospects may look at to understand more about the business and the services, should at least have an updated profile.
Yeah, because that goes deeper nowadays. Like
Absolutely.
Some of our developers who now ask, "Can you please write a blog?" They write a blog. So from
Absolutely.
then on,
Then they're public. So yes, so if they're commenting on or writing content, which I'll come to in a moment, on behalf of the company, then absolutely they need to represent the company.
It makes our job easier as recruiters to headhunt them.
Yeah.
So, Rick,
Yes.
we're talking about personal brand.
Yes.
And I guess, being naive, I've seen LinkedIn very much as something that's about me.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage that crossover that, in my case, if I work for a company, am I branding me or am I branding the company through that LinkedIn profile?
In the profile, your profile, I think you're branding you fundamentally, but your values need to talk to the company values as well. So when you're doing a description of where you work and the value that your company brings, that's the company values, and I'll talk a little bit about company pages later on, but when you're talking about the successes that you've created for your clients, that's where it should talk about you. So we have a belief that I think most people would probably share, that people buy people. So when you're talking to your prospects, they want to know that the company's got the right values, has the right ethos, etc. But fundamentally, they want to know what you're all about. And so it's really important that it's a personal profile, not a company profile. I'll steal a slide that I'll talk about it towards the end. The company profile needs to also echo the same sort of things that you're saying as well. So when we do our audit, we look at and we ask, what's the company values and proposition about, so that we can make sure we're bringing that down into your personal level as well. Any other questions on that? So the last point there, which I haven't mentioned there, is recommendations. So there's two parts of LinkedIn that are a growing area. Recommendations have been around for a while, and then expertise, I think is what they talk about it. So,
Endorsements.
endorsements, thank you. Generally, people don't pay much attention to the fact that I've expertise or endorsements in CRM or that long list of things. What people do pay attention to are the recommendation section. So these are personal testimonial that you have at the bottom of your LinkedIn profile and integrated in depending how you have it set up. And it's well worth going and asking your current clients and prospects, and then when they become a client, if they would write you a recommendation. Like many people, I'm sure we all get asked to do referrals for previous staff members, that sort of thing. So we do draft them up for some of our clients and say, could you do this, and post it for us as well. But that's a key part that drives to the value proposition as well. The next step is finding prospects. So once you've gone through the process of writing up your profile, how do you find who you want to talk to? And often people find this is one of the hardest things to do. Just checking where I'm going on that. Come back to some of those. So finding prospects. This is the search page on the right-hand side of the screen. I've got a thingy. Where is it? No. No.
Do you have to be on premium to get that?
No. So I'll talk about that in a bit of a sec. So you do get more on premium, and I'll come back to that question. You get some basic search that you can do in LinkedIn to find people. So this is a people search, and as you can see, you can search on a variety of different criteria. You can look at keywords, names, location, country, title, and a variety of other things in terms of, or the most important one there is specific to keywords, etc. So when you're trying to find and think about how to reach your prospects, it's really important to think about what are they looking for, where are their experiences, etc. What I thought I'd quickly do now, just to give you a bit of takeaway work, is if people could take 2 minutes and think about either your hottest prospect that you're trying to reach or the deal you're trying to close, and just write down a quick list of data you know about them. So, what industry are they in, where are they based, what their company name is, and any other information. So, company name, who you're trying to reach, if you've got a specific person, the influencers, so job titles that you think you're trying to reach as well. So if you can all just take 2 minutes, no more, and a list of things like these criteria, so where they're based, the title of the people you're trying to reach, the company name of either your key prospect you're trying to reach or a deal you're trying to close at the moment. So the reason I've asked you to do that is so that today when you go back to your office, you've got something actionable. There's lots of data and research around trying to create change in people is about giving them something simple they can do immediately to change it. So this afternoon, when you get back to your office, you can log on to your LinkedIn profile and immediately start to search for your prospects. And that'll pull up different people you're trying to deal with in the in your prospect client list, etc. And one of the things, the other ways you can then search for people is when you see, and I don't have a screenshot of this, when you pull up a profile on LinkedIn, on the right-hand side there are two other boxes that LinkedIn shows you. One is called People Also Viewed, which shows you other people that have viewed that profile you're looking at. And then the second one, is People Similar To, which is buried towards the bottom. So the People Also Viewed typically shows you who else in that company is looked at that profile. So often you'll find their manager, their colleagues, and other senior people have looked at that profile. So it starts to build a profile of who else is in this company that you could then look at. So if you're talking to Mary, and you can see that Mary's a marketing director or marketing manager because that's who I target, and then there's Jane, just to keep on the female skew, and Jane's a marketing director, suddenly I've realised I know two other people in that business as well. The People Similar is a really interesting way to then look for who are their competitors, because what LinkedIn does, it shows you other people, other people with, there we go, other people who have similar work experience or jobs in different companies. So suddenly you can start to get an understanding and research into who are their competitors and other people that you could be talking to at the same time.
It's using keywords to serve up those.
Correct, yeah. Which really goes to this. So LinkedIn is not an overly intelligent, if you use Google as an intelligent search criteria, LinkedIn is very straightforward. LinkedIn is all based on keywords. So hence the reason it's important to put in your profile and in this when you're looking for people as well. It really looks at detail in the keywords they've got there.
Can I just jump in for 2 seconds?
Sure.
When we often do, we get a lot of work doing deal reviews with organisations, And my first question invariably is, have you looked at them on LinkedIn? And 90% of the time people say no.
Well, I'll talk to that in my next slide.
So why wouldn't you go to LinkedIn, potentially find who that boss is they haven't told you about, etc.?
Yep, absolutely.
Rick, there's a couple of emails that are sort of coming through now that businesses that say they can find you any prospect. So it's almost they come to you and they almost push back and they say, what's your need, what's your thing, and we'll get you a list of qualified prospects. Is that the new echelon of business that's kind of taking advantage of this?
And this goes to the time question as well. So yes, there are, so once you start doing this sort of thing, you'll find that one of the most common requests you'll get will be businesses predominantly out of Philippines, offering you LinkedIn services to create lists for you and then build connections. We don't, as a business, we will do all the management setup, etc., but don't do the connection component to it. LinkedIn doesn't allow it, which is why we don't do it. But there are plenty of businesses that will get you a list of people and then set up meetings for you and that sort of thing at a low cost. So and these are all businesses that used to do cold calling, and they've realised that there's no numbers in that, so this is the way they're doing it. Which goes to the perception, the spam question here. So if all they're doing is sending out hundreds of messages on your behalf, LinkedIn will pick it up. They'll pick it up that you're doing it at 2 a.m. in the morning and from an IP in Philippines, and they'll end up blocking your account. So it's quite a risky thing to do, is to outsource that. There are things you can outsource, and I can talk to that a little bit more as well. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to just jump quickly through that. The other area to find your prospects is on the right-hand side is groups. So groups is another part of LinkedIn. It's again one of the older parts of LinkedIn compared to some of the newer publishing components. But it's really important at the end of every profile, it shows you where your prospects, which groups your prospects are members of. And that does two things for you. One, shows you where you should be active, because where your prospects are is where you should be fishing. And two, it shows you where you can then go and find other people in your industry. So you'll find that people are involved in 2 or 3 types of groups. They're either in groups that are industry specific, which is a great one for you to, or they're groups that are alumni type groups, or they're interest groups as well. So depending on how you're trying to connect to them, you may want to focus on some of their interests, or specifically and more importantly, on their industry-based groups as well. As I said, I was going to come to the point that JD made around understanding our audience more. So knowledge, we all know, is power. So the more we understand about our audience, the better we can then engage them and drive a process through to them. The permission, we use what we talk about as I've lost my pointer, a 3x3 strategy. So that's really simple. Take 3 minutes to find 3 things that you have in common about a prospect before you reach out to them. And that reach out could be a sales call, could be a LinkedIn email, could be an email, whatever. But spend 3 minutes to find 3 things that are in common. Typically, recommend looking at their interests, the groups they're in, their hobbies, the school they went to, university they went to, previous jobs they've been into, or the simplest one, which is down here, wave John, because there we go, is who else they're connected with. So, and ironically, as I was planning for this last night, I got an email saying, hi, JD and I are connected and you and I are connected. JD, you and I both know JD and 2 or 3 other people that we both know. Can we connect? So it gives you some sort of personal connection if you can find some sort of interest to use that. Once you go through and find some connections, it's also really important to look at what language they use, what's important to them in their business. So as a simple example, if they talk about return on investment versus efficiency as a driver in their business, then when you call them, that's the sort of language you should be using, or when you email them, that's the sort of language you should be using. Try to sound like they sound, which is something that JD will probably talk a little bit more, rather than sounding like you want them to sound, or that you want them to think you are. Creating connections, and I'm going to go a little bit quickly through here. So creating connections, and this goes to some of these points here, is all about confidence and comfort. So the process we're trying to look for here is how do you build confidence and comfort within your prospect's mind that you are an industry expert and know what you're talking about, and taking it away from a features and benefits sale into this person's going to add value and create direction for me. And that goes to creation of content and curation of content. So, and to the comment around requires content, there are 2 ways to do it. And our journey through LinkedIn started with this as well, and it's a strategy that we highly recommend. If you don't have the capabilities to write your own content, long form articles or even short blog posts, a really simple strategy that is far less consuming of time is to curate content. Find third-party content that is industry specific that you can add a short insight into and then post that into LinkedIn. And just start by doing that and see what results you get from that, and then talk to your marketing department around how do we get better blog posts if you're not comfortable writing, or start writing a long form article. Again, this is not about frequency, it's about quality of content. So if you can only do one article a month, that's fantastic, and then try to put in a couple of curated content as well. But if you can't even do that, just one weekly article that you're posting into LinkedIn is going to start to build that profile as well and start to deliver that confidence and comfort around it. In terms of LinkedIn publishing, and to your point, to your question, Sandy, there are a variety of different avenues you can use for publishing on LinkedIn. The obvious one and the simplest one is what LinkedIn calls an update. It's a bit like a Facebook update, but allows you to put, as I said, a short comment about an article and link to a third-party article as well. These same updates can then be posted into groups as well. So if you've decided what are the 2 or 3 groups that you want to be active in and you want to participate in, a really simple way to participate is find some really good industry journals or magazines or articles that have been written and post them into the group with your insight or how you understand and interpret that. The final is that LinkedIn recently launched, probably about a year ago, what they call Pulse, which is their long-form publishing tool. It's a great publishing platform to do, and LinkedIn is aggressively moving into training and publishing as an avenue. And Pulse is their long-form article, and it really is, it's more than just a blog post. It's a 500 plus sort of word platform. The advantage that Pulse has from an update is that it gets pushed to a broader audience. And LinkedIn has a query behind it that says if your Pulse articles are getting viewed by more people, they will then push it out to more people that fit the criteria of what you're doing, what you're writing about. So it's really a useful way to do it. And then once you've started that process of building confidence and comfort, your content creating or curating content, you can then start the process of reaching out to people to connect them. Because once they get that connection, and I do it every time somebody connects, I look at their profile, I then look at what they've updated. And are they just trying to sell me something, or are they actually going to be able to, if I follow them, to get some value out of what they're putting into the into market?
So,
Yes.
you talk LinkedIn, but you just happen to mention their Facebook,
Yep.
and it does rather prompt the question,
Sure.
to what extent should you be using things like Facebook, which obviously becomes a little more personal than perhaps the profile
Sure.
on LinkedIn, Twitter and other mediums?
Sure. Happy to comment on that, and I'll be very quick on it. So Facebook, on the assumption we're all B2B selling, which I assume we are, we aggressively recommend away from Facebook. It is fundamentally a personal medium, and the two should not blur. And your profile in Facebook should be very different to your profile in LinkedIn. Twitter, on the other side of it, absolutely. So we have a very strong LinkedIn and Twitter strategy. So your posts that you're going into LinkedIn easily fit into Twitter as well. So I'll leave it at that, because there was a question over here.
The way to get better on LinkedIn is to go against the flow.
Yeah.
So it's to really be provocative,
Yeah.
and provocative in an insightful and positive way. If you just taking someone else's content, I think instead of reposting that and passing comment, being provocative around that is quite an interesting way to get.
Yeah. So we talk about it's better to talk to people that count them than count the people you talk to. So we would much rather talk to a smaller group of people that we have that believe in what we talk about and alienate people because we take a strong opinion. So I completely agree that it's better to be opinionated and believe in something than try to please everybody.
Great. And also, I'd be interested to know if the two options being post someone else's content and generate your own content, in terms of its effectiveness as a strategy to achieve thought leadership. I've got a mate who is simply posting other people's content daily, and he believes that putting him into a thought leadership role and it's actually generating quite a lot of leads for him. In terms of return on effort, that's a hell of a lot easier than writing your own content. I was wondering if you have any thoughts about the efficacy, or if is there an ideal balance, or can you get away with simply sort of borrowing other people's content?
And to the point that I don't know your name, I'm sorry.
Me?
Yeah.
Peter.
Peter made. If you're driving an opinion in that, and that opinion is a valid opinion, doesn't need to be agreed by everybody, absolutely curation is a great strategy. And going to the...
Interesting is probably a better word than valid. If someone wants to disagree with you vehemently, they're at least engaging with you.
Yeah, yes. Correct. So going to the time and resources and the requirement for content, curation is a great strategy to start with that. It depends where you're trying to drive to in the industry as well and how senior you are to answer the question. So for us, it was really important that we then moved into not just borrowing other people's content, because in marketing there is a huge amount of content, as I'm sure you know, but we wanted to be stronger in our opinion and be pushing our own opinions and thoughts into the market as well. I'm just really conscious of time. I'm already probably cutting into JDs. So very quickly, an approach and methodologies. I've talked through some quick tools around that. What I wanted to just quickly talk through is the methodology, because the most common question we get is, that's great, what's the order, when should I do things, etc. So very quickly, just wanted to talk through the process to do it. So it's really important that when you're going down this road, that the processes are followed. So the most important thing is to get your profile correct. Start with your profile, then start looking at your search criteria, then start identifying your targets who you want to, and start drafting content and the email scripts that you want to use. So start finding where your sources, where you're going to curate content if that's what you're going to do, start developing your opinions. You can then start to look at how you build your reputation through that content marketing, the curation and curation and creation of content. The third step is then is starting to reach out to networks through content connection requests and meeting requests. And then the fourth step is then the meetings and building your pipeline. I'm going to sort of stop at that point, and JD will then, as I said earlier, will then take it through from there. But just to the point that a few points that are here around unsure, fear of rejection, that sort of thing. If you're talking through those, if you're taking it from a perspective of leadership and you're giving an opinion, the rejections will be far less. And ultimately, the people that believe and want to follow you will follow you because of your opinion. If you look at politics, it's a great way. There's no doubt wedge politics, for John Howard, as we all know, created his success around it. And it's the same thing. If you create an opinion, people who believe your opinion will follow your opinion. The other thing that we do, as I've already talked about, we work with all of our clients to support them through this process. So I've talked a bit about the profiles. We set up and train people on how to use the search tools, etc. We look at, obviously we've got a content creation, not obviously, but we do have a content creation process where we help create the content, and then we can manage that for our clients as well. I'm going to go very quickly through here because I'm very short of time, but there are a few other opportunities, and we've talked about this already a little bit. One is you can integrate LinkedIn really successfully with both your CRM system and marketing automation platforms. And if you're not really sure what I'm talking about, I'm more than happy to take questions at the end. But what this allows you to do is manage LinkedIn at your time, but post when it's effective for your audience, rather than posting when it's effective for you. So if you're a night person and you want to set this all up, you can set up all your posts for a week in advance one night and then drip them out over the time. If you're integrating LinkedIn into your CRM system, then LinkedIn will automatically forward data and behavior analysis that you can then use to understand more about your audience into Salesforce or that sort of thing as well. Company pages I talked about earlier to your question as well. Company pages are critical. It's probably more sits in the roles and responsibility of your marketing department. We'll give out the deck later on anyway, but I thought just a checklist of things to think about for your company pages. But absolutely, as I said earlier, your company page has to echo what you've said and what you're going through in your personal profile as well. LinkedIn sales solution. So who's got a paid premium account on LinkedIn? Many people?
Well, there's several variations of pay.
There are several, but any pay, just at least a premium one. So first thing I'd recommend if you want to do this is you should go and get a paid premium account. It is a bit of money. The key value of a premium account is its search capability. It gives you a much wider search opportunity and it gives you more connections. So at the moment, if you've just got a free account, you can probably only see 1 and 2 connections, but you can start to see third level connections. And then if you're setting it up, there are a number of sales tools that LinkedIn has as well. The primary one is what they call their Sales Navigator, which is a tool at a base level is fairly similar to the premium account. But if you've got a sales team and you're all on the same Sales Navigator tool, you can actually share leads and prospects across your team. So you can start to get a much deeper, fuller picture of who in a company knows other people in your company as well. So it's a really powerful tool, and they've just launched a new solution around that as well. So very quickly to summary, because I'm sure I'm well and truly over, we recommend a 4-stage process. Start by creating your personal brand, moving into finding the right people, engaging them with valuable insights to build a strong relationship ultimately with them. My quick tips for social selling, as you should have already heard these already, but really it's about being a thought leader, and that can be through curation rather than creation of content. Use keywords in your profile, then use those same keywords to drive the people you want to reach and search to, and use the LinkedIn tools to build your pipeline. So one other quick exercise, sorry JD. Knowing what you now know, I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. Think about the presentation I've just gone through. Find one thing that you think you could do when you go back to your office this afternoon to change what you did yesterday, and write that one thing down. One thing that you could do this afternoon to improve how you use LinkedIn in your sales process. If you still are unsure how to move from the wishing stage to the doing stage, as I said, there are a variety of services that Permission delivers that. We actually have an offer today for a discounted audit of your profile that allows a recommendation booklet on how you can improve your profile as well. In the files you're given when you came in, that offer is there, and there's a form to complete to take that up. Thank you. I'll probably take questions at the end, given I'm way over my time. I've still got 5 minutes. Oh, good.
Any questions?
Any questions? Yes.
You just started briefly talking about the tool where you could use it to post at different times.
Yep.
There's a number of them on the market.
Yes.
Is there anything specific that you recommend?
Depending what you're trying to achieve is the answer. So there are tools like Hootsuite, and I can't remember if Hootsuite, it's just gone blank whether it has a LinkedIn tool. It does, I'm pretty sure it did. So which is probably the base level one, which is very good and has a free and a paid version, depending how far you're driving it. So the tools that I was talking about, marketing automation tools, where I suggest you'd want to drive these to, because then they facilitate a much broader marketing strategy as well. But it depends what the business is using. So for example, in our business, is a great way to do it. So Emil, me, and the company, we post to the company every day. It's actually managed by one of our marketing staff. The content's created and obviously approved by us, but the tool allows to act on as a system that we use. The tool allows our marketing coordinator to actually log into our profiles seamlessly, schedule posts, and then they get drip fed over the time. So it depends how you're managing it. If you're managing it just yourself and you're happy doing it at any time, then LinkedIn, you don't need to go down the road of getting a tool. If you want it to be managed across multiple profiles or schedule it, then you'll need something like a Hootsuite or more advanced than that. Yeah, Hootsuite's a great tool for that. So in the world of marketing automation, there's Acton, HubSpot, you may have heard of, Marketo. These are all tools that allow you to manage content and use content as a way to drive people back to your website. Part of that content is your social media posting. And thank you all for coming. We appreciate 8 a.m. is a very early start. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
We're both here if you want more questions.